Hello. I have a monitor in the back so I can see myself. Okay guys, welcome back to my channel. So today, this is another topic about dietetics. We're gonna be talking about how much money will you make as a dietitian. So this topic has a lot of different factors that play into it. So I'll just talk about my factors and my history, and then also things that I've researched. Cause I don't like when people have videos about income and then they take too long to get there, or they actually just don't ever really say how much, like what is the number. So in this video, you're gonna get exactly that. You're gonna get the numbers, you're gonna get the background, and just stuff like that. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to hopefully get to them. So to start off, I live in the DMV area, so DC, Maryland, Virginia. So that plays a large factor into how much I've made and kind of like the income in this area, because the cost of living is a little bit higher over here. So depending on where you live, if the cost of living is higher, you'll see that it costs, or you have a higher income as an incoming or as an entry-level dietitian. Okay, so when I was working at WIC, so my history is I went to college for 4 years, got my degree in dietetics, my bachelor's in dietetics. I didn't get into an internship the first time around. I went back and I worked for a little bit. I worked for a year, and then after I worked for a year, then I went on to go get my internship. So with that history. So when I got out of college, as just having a degree in dietetics, nothing else, I started to work at WIC. So women, infants, and children. And at WIC, I was making $19 an hour, which was equivalent to $42,000 a year. So that was a full-time job. So I was actually seeing that $42,000 a year. So that was my first income without a degree, or without my internship, without my license, just as a nutritionist, which is really hard to find. I was making $19 an hour. It was roundabout. It was like a $19 point something, but I can't really remember it right now. But I do know that it was about $42,000 a year. So after that, I decided, okay, I want to go get my internship. And at the same time, I was pursuing my master's in a completely different topic, which was counseling psychology. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get my master's in counseling psychology, and I want to go back and get this internship that everyone is always talking about, and I feel like it's necessary for me to have because I wanted to be a registered dietitian. Did the matching process, didn't match. So then I went through Howard University, who has a coordinated program, and they don't use the matching system. You could just apply to their program directly. So I applied and I got in, just did my internship for 3 semesters. Okay, so after that, I was, I guess, eligible to take my exam, but it was not yet in the system. So when I was eligible to take my exam, I did get a job because I was like, I want to work. I haven't worked for the past 1.5 years. I want to work because it's just been too much sitting at home. So I decided to get a job, and I was working at a weight loss center. At that weight loss center, I was making $50,000 coming in. And if I passed my exam, I would be raised to $55,000. So now the thing with most or all of the jobs that I realized when you have it as a dietitian or even as a nutritionist, I was making hourly, if that makes sense. It was salary, like meaning you had to still be there for 40 hours or less, 36 to 40 hours a week, but you still have to like clock in. Like you clock in, you clock out. Those are all the jobs that I've had. I know that a lot of people who work in like hospital settings or in clinical, they don't necessarily have to clock in, but I'll get into like my whole job history, more into that. Okay, so after I was working for the weight loss clinic, I decided that it wasn't for me. I didn't like it. So I never really got that raise to $55,000. So I was like, let me just wait and pass my exam. And when I pass my exam, I'll look for jobs then. So after I passed my exam, I decided, well, I don't want to go into clinical because I was getting married, like I said. So I wanted to go into something that I was able to manage, but I still wanted to really challenge myself. So I went into long-term care. So I work for a long-term care company, not necessarily the building. So let's say building A, kind of like Sodexo and Morrison and Aramark, like, you know, those are companies that hire dietitians that go into hospitals. I work for a company like that in regards to long-term care. So coming into that company, I was making $26 an hour. So I'm a registered dietitian. As a bachelor's degree, when I just had a bachelor's degree, I was making $19 an hour. So now I was making $26 an hour. So I did see that progression of, okay, the difference of getting my, becoming a registered dietitian. It was about $7 pay increase every hour. So $26 an hour is almost equivalent to about $52,000. It was a little bit less than the weight loss company, but it was still kind of it was okay for what I was expecting. However, I wasn't working full time, so I wasn't seeing that $52,000 for that long-term care company. And this is another myth. Everyone says that when you go into long-term care and you make the most money at long-term care. I did not make the most money at long-term care. I like long-term care because it's much slower and you get the clinical experience, but I wouldn't say you make more money. I actually do believe that clinical dietitians, maybe that work for these different companies, actually make more. However, I've never been in their position, so I don't know how much they make. Okay, so the last position that I've had and I've held as a dietitian is a consult dietitian. So you see these positions where it's contract, or sometimes they'll say it's PRN, but I was a consult dietitian for a specific company. And that company, depending on the contract that you get, the hourly wage differs. However, I know there are a lot of people who are travel dietitians. Well, I don't know a lot. I've only met one travel dietitian. So they make that rate and they just get placed at different jobs, kind of like a travel nurse. So they get placed at different jobs across the United States, and they're eligible to get their licensure from those different states. They will pay for that. So I worked for that position, but within the DMV area. I didn't want to be a travel. I just wanted to get some contract jobs here and there. So I think that if you're making, if you're a travel dietitian, you make about this much annually. So this is my prediction. I'm not completely sure. But as a contract dietitian, I was making $40 an hour. So I was only working 16 hours a week. So, but that still added up. I was making more in that 16 hours than I was making in my 24 hours for my long-term care. So if you're a travel dietitian and you make $40 annually or $40 an hour and you work the whole year as a travel dietitian, that is equivalent to $83,200. So it's a lot of money. I think the most money you find is in contract dietetics, but then they always talk about how you don't get benefits, you don't get things like that. So that is something that you have to kind of consider. However, the contract company that I personally work for, they did take out taxes. It wasn't like I had to hold my taxes and then pay it at the end of tax season. They actually took out the taxes for me because you're an employee for that company, but you are a contractor for going to these different locations, if that makes sense. So you're still on their payroll, but when you get different jobs, that's when you're activated. So I personally have a master's, and the last topic I want to talk about is, do you feel, or if I had noticed a difference about having a master's or a bachelor's? Personally, for me, no, there was no difference. There is no difference in pay. You come in as an entry level, whether you have a master's or not. I personally was making the same rate. However, my master's was a conversation starter for a lot of these interviews. Oh, I have a master's in counseling. So I was able to talk about it, but it wasn't the thing that hired me. A lot of times what hires you is your license. So that's what I've noticed. And that's what I've kind of just observed in the dietetic community. But because starting, I have it written down the day. So starting January 1st, 2024, it will be required for you to have a master's coming in. Not anybody who's already grandfathered. We're all good if you didn't get a master's. But now when you want to sit or you want to register for your exam, January 1st, 2024, you would have had to have a master's. How do I feel about that? My opinion is that if you are requiring a master's, because masters generally cost more money, I would hope that the income for a dietitian also increases. So if you're requiring me to have a master's, kind of like if a nurse practitioner or anybody was required to have a higher degree, I would expect that my income now matches the amount it cost for me to get that master's. So that's the only thing. On the CDR, it actually says that they noticed a $5,000 difference between people who hold a bachelor's and people who hold a master's. Again, that was not my case. I was making the same. My master's didn't one-up me in any type of way. But they did say that they noticed that people with masters earn an average about $25 an hour, and then people with bachelors earn about an average of $23.79. I'll put the frequently asked questions in the bar as well. So it's really up to you what you personally want to do. However, if you know you're already tired of school, go ahead and get that master's now, because you don't want to wait until 2024 and you're like, oh, I still have to get this master's. Or because you don't have to get it, but if everyone is graduating with the master's, I do personally, how I would feel, I would be like, everybody has a master's, I only have a bachelor's. That's how I would personally feel. So if you're tired of school, just go ahead and get it right now. So I hope that makes sense. Another thing is, they said a PhD, someone who holds a PhD makes much more. I've been considering whether or not I want to go on and get, because I do want my next degree. If I was to get like a doctorate degree, I would want it to be in nutrition, but I haven't decided if I want to do a doctor of clinical nutrition or if I just want to do a PhD. I'm not a big fan of research, but if you have any suggestions, really let me know. I hope this video was helpful to let you know how much a dietitian makes. Again, this is different for the area that you live in. I do notice that in the DMV area, we do make a little bit more than other areas. But again, this is something that you can apply for, or that you can apply the information. So if you know that as an entry level, without your internship, I was making $42,000 with WIC, then it's like if a job was offering me $42,000, I'm not gonna think that's okay, because I can make that without having an internship. So those are things that you can keep in mind. If you have any questions, again, leave them in the comments, and thank you for watching.